Hi, everybody. It's Sophia Mona Lisa from the Golden Race Center and the Roseville Mystery School. And I'm super excited about this video journal that I'm bringing to you today because I'm going to be talking about something that happened in the sky yesterday, June 15th, that hasn't happened in over 11,000 years. And the fact that it's happening just 3 days before our new moon in Gemini, I'm going to tie those events together. Now let's talk about 11,000 years ago. That is considered to be, in terms of a timeline, around 9,000 BCE. And at that time, what we experienced as a humanity on the globe was what they call the Neolithic Revolution. It was the agricultural revolution where mankind went from small hunter-gatherer tribes into actually settling down and starting to produce crops for themselves. So this was a huge shift in the mindset, right? And you're going to understand in just a minute why I made that reference. Okay, so what happened yesterday that has happened for the first time in over 11,000 years? And that event is the move of the goddess Sedna, the Inuit goddess Sedna, from Taurus into Gemini. Let me see if I can move this so that you can see it better. Here we go. Right here, this is the glyph for Gemini, and here's Sedna, 0 degrees, 0 minutes of Sedna, having crossed the threshold from 29 degrees Taurus, 59 minutes, to that 0 degrees, 0 minutes of Gemini. And look who's standing right next to her, Maria Salome, and I'll explain to you why that's significant. So first of all, let's go back and track this movement of Sedna from Taurus into Gemini. So at 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, yesterday, June 15th, Sedna and Maria Salome were conjunct at 29 degrees Taurus, 29 minutes. This is huge because Maria Salome is the holy soul aspect of Sophia. This is all about spiritual community and what I refer to as becoming the New Jerusalem as a part of that spiritual community. And the fact that at this mastery point of embodiment in Taurus, we were given this empowerment by Sedna, who transmutes everything into transmuting us and what we're capable of embodying in terms of becoming that new Jerusalem within our sacred vessel. Now, an hour later, at 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Maria Salome preceded Sedna by crossing that threshold of Taurus to Gemini and arrived at the 0 degrees, 0 minutes of Gemini. So Gemini, remember what Gemini is about. It's the ruler of the third house. It's ruled by Mercury, the cosmic messenger. It has to do with our lower mind and the things of the lower mind. So all of our belief systems, all of the mental programming. This is the area that gets attacked through psyops. It has to do with the way that we perceive information, the way that we store information, the way that we process information, the way that we retrieve information, the way that we communicate information, whether it's verbally or non-verbally. So there's a lot that has to do with this Gemini realm. And before the Capricorn goddess was on the world stage through the Venus synodic cycle, we had a Venus synodic cycle that went through the realm of Gemini. The Gemini goddess was on the world stage, and she has many, many archetypes. Some of the most commonly known are the storyteller, the trickster, One of the less known archetypes of the Gemini goddess is the rainbow goddess. And the rainbow goddess has to do with our chakra system that very clearly has that rainbow color system aligned with it. And also in our brain, which most people associate as the mind, but really the brain is an organ that functions like a computer. The mind is a consciousness field, but the brain itself has what's called the corpus callosum that runs down the middle of the brain that separates the left hemisphere from the right hemisphere. And so as a part of the rainbow goddess journey in Gemini, what we were doing is we were balancing the two spheres of the brain to be able to cross over that corpus callosum and be able to access the higher mind, the unified mind. And so all of that is also at play in terms of these Gemini energies, depending which path you want to go down and inspect a little bit further and a little bit deeper. And so then at 5:50 a.m., exactly, not 5:49, 5:50 a.m., Sedna crossed that Taurus threshold into Gemini. And when Sedna came to that 0 degrees, 0 minute position in Gemini, Maria Salome had already moved ahead by 1 minute. Now, we just had on June 11th, 4 days prior to this move by Sedna that hasn't happened in over 11,000 years, we had Pluto move from 0 degrees of Aquarius to 29 degrees of Capricorn. And he's at 29 degrees, 56 minutes. So within 4 minutes of that 0 degrees, 0 minutes of Aquarius, Gemini and Aquarius are both air elements, and at that 0 degree mark, they create a trine to each other, that path of most allowance, allowing the lower mind to be alchemized, be transmuted, to receive a whole new electrical upgrade system for it to be able to access the higher mind, the divine mind, so to speak. And so at just 4 minutes away from that 0 degrees of Aquarius, Pluto is still very much at play in terms of the trine that it's making to Sedna and Maria Salome. But here we've got a different flavor because of the Capricorn energies and this 29 degree point about mastery. And so flowing into Sedna, flowing into Maria Salome, the ability for us to be able to master whatever it is that Sedna and Salome are going to be transmuting within the mental realm, the lower mind. And so Sedna and Pluto, they're big heavy hitters, and they're kind of like partners, because Pluto, as we know, is all about alchemizing. Sedna is about transmutation. And really, you could say that alchemy and transmutation are two sides to the same coin. So what's happening with this ingress by Sedna into Gemini that hasn't happened in over 11,000 years is huge for humanity. And how do you know? Think about the shift in consciousness that happened for humanity when they went from being hunter-gatherers to agriculturalists. That is a huge paradigm shift. That is a whole new field of consciousness that was downloaded into the minds of humanity to be able to make those shifts. So we are once again on the precipice of experiencing a mental shift that is going to be just as significant as that shift that took place for humanity 11,000 years ago through that agricultural revolution. Okay, let's move forward. Now, want to talk to you about some things about Sedna in terms of how we are going to be tracking her movement. First of all, I already mentioned 3 days before this new moon in Gemini on June 18th, Sedna has made this move into Gemini. And so what Sedna is doing and what the new moon is doing while they're on polar sides of that Gemini realm, which you'll see, they are definitely connected. And we know that they're connected because Sedna made her ingress prior to this new moon. It's like she's setting the stage for the new moon. And remember what I say about new moons. New moons are the perfect time for planting seeds. And for me, it's all about planting seeds for new fields of consciousness, especially when we're dealing with the mental realm like Gemini. It's definitely about a whole new field of consciousness in terms of a whole new way that we think about how we as a humanity are being in the world. Now, Sedna will journey through Gemini for about 43 years. But look at what's been happening with Sedna. I was born in 1963. In 1963, in my natal chart, I have Sedna in Aries. Sedna moved from Aries to Taurus in 1965, just 2 years after I was born. And in a previous video, I talked about how for the majority of my life, Sedna has been making her journey through Taurus. And in fact, Sedna's journey through Taurus is for about 58 years. Now, prior to my birth in 1963, Sedna had entered Aries in 1867. So by the time she moved from Aries into Taurus in 1965, she had been traveling through Aries for about 98 years. So once again, very similar to Pluto, she is a slow moving dwarf planet. You know, Pluto got kind of downgraded from a regular planet to a dwarf planet as well. So another similarity between the two. Pluto, in terms of how its slow movement, it takes about 20 years, right? About 2 decades for it to move through an astrological sign. Sedna, though, is way, way, way out there, like the deepest space that we can imagine. And so she's bringing all kinds of new evolutionary stuff from deep, deep space into our realm that we wouldn't have access to otherwise if it weren't for her. And because of the fact that she's so far away from the earth, this is one of the reasons why her journey through the astrological signs is a much longer journey than even Pluto himself, who we already identify as being a slow moving planet, dwarf planet. Now, from yesterday, June 15th, until November 22nd of this year, Sedna will be in Gemini. And at a certain point, she will retrograde and she will go back on November 23rd, back into Taurus. And she will continue that retrograde journey until February 12th of next year. So from November 23rd to February 12th, when she stations direct. And remember what I've said about planets that are having a retrograde journey. It's like a vision quest. What is it that you need to know about yourself in terms of who you are evolving into at the leading edge that you missed the first time that Sedna moved over those last degrees of Taurus. So you're going to be able to experience that vision quest. And then from February 12th until April 28th of next year, that's when Sedna will return to Gemini, cross over that threshold from Taurus to Gemini. And what's really super spectacular about this date is that this date, April 28th, is the day after the new Leo goddess and the new Venus synodic cycle of the Leo divine royalty goddess journey will have descended into the Inanna underworld. So this is huge that Sedna, in her move between Taurus and Gemini, is having this interaction on a grander scale with the Leo divine royalty goddess, moving into Gemini the day after the Leo goddess descends into the Inanna underworld. And of course, by then, we'll be talking more about that and all kinds of other juicy pieces that may have revealed themselves to us by then. Now, once Sedna moves back over that threshold to the 0 degree of Gemini, she's going to be moving back and forth, right? Direct over 0 degrees, 1 degrees, and back over 1 degrees and 0 degrees, and back over 1 degrees and 0 degrees, back and forth over 0 and 1 degrees of Gemini. And she will continue to do that. Look at how long her movement over those first 2 degrees of Gemini is going to last. From April 28th of next year, 2024, through June 21st of 2026, just a little bit over 2 years it's taking her to move back and forth. And isn't it synchronistic that the last day that Sedna is going to be in that 1 degree of Gemini happens to be a solstice day? So let's see what's going to show up 3 years from now. We're getting ready to have our own solstice on June 21st, 2023. So 3 years from now, what are things going to be looking like? We're going to be experiencing the unfolding of this journey with Sedna. And I've talked a lot about Sedna in many of my videos and the importance she is as an ally to humanity. And so on June 22nd, then of 2026, she will finally move into that 2nd degree of Gemini. So this is a long, slow journey that is bringing in other cycles with it that are going to be exciting to explore in conjunction with what she's doing for humanity in terms of what it is that she's transmuting for us in our mental realm. Okay, I mentioned before that Sedna and Pluto are kind of like 2 sides of the same coin because she's doing transmutation work, he's doing alchemizing work. But let me remind you, she's going to, let me just go back so I can reference to this. She's going back into Gemini April 28th of next year, Gemini and air sign. Pluto will already have been back into Aquarius just about 4 months prior. January 20th next year is when Pluto moves back into Aquarius. So during those months after April 28th, when Sedna moves back into Gemini, we're going to be experiencing that trine again between Sedna and Pluto, that path of most allowance from the Aquarian energies, which is our multidimensional self, being able to create from the quantum field, and then having all of that flow into the lower mind. What kind of mental concepts are we going to be receiving through Aquarius that are going to catapult humanity in terms of our evolution that is going to be on a same par or greater than when humanity shifted from being hunter-gatherers to agriculturalists. This is big. So just kind of pulling that piece in so that you can see how it ties together. Okay, now to really get what's happening with Sedna, it's important for you to understand the myth about Sedna as an archetype. And as I mentioned, she's an Intuit goddess. And if you start doing research on Sedna, there are like 5 or 6 different stories, different myths about Sedna. But what's fascinating is that every one of those 5 or 6 myths ends up at the same crucial point. And that crucial point is that for some reason, somehow, some way, Sedna ends up out in the ocean with her father in a kayak or a boat, whatever you want to refer to it is, and he ends up throwing her overboard. And she's hanging onto the side of the boat. And in his rage, he cuts off her fingers so that she cannot hold onto the boat or try to climb back into the boat. And when that happens, she descends to the bottom of the ocean. And as she does that, something very transmutational begins to happen. The fingers that were cut off become the seals and the whales in the ocean. And her own hands that have been maimed become flippers, and even her feet become flippers. And so she then resides the rest of her life at the bottom of the ocean. And the Inuits pray to her as the mother of the ocean to send them good harvests from the sea, whether it's, filling their fishing nets or if they're out, whaling or whatever they're doing in their hunt to be able to get the sustenance from the ocean. And so the critical piece about that one point that all 5 or 6 myths get to is this angry father who has thrown her overboard. And what this relates to is the patriarchy. And so this is why in my own translation, in terms of what Sedna represents, is I have translated her frequencies, her energies in terms of being an ally for humanity as, hold on a second here, transmuting the wounds of patriarchy, right? She gets her fingers cut off, her hands are maimed. Sedna transmutes the wounds of patriarchy. This is her big medicine to humanity. Now, it's interesting when you start looking at patriarchy because you see all kinds of stuff out there about dismantling the patriarchy, about smashing the patriarchy. But we know that, anger and hate only breeds more anger and hate. And so, and that is not the medicine of Sedna in terms of this transmutation. I read this book years and years ago. It's called Unplugging the Patriarchy by Lucia Renee, A Mystical Journey into the Heart of a New Age. I've actually read this book on numerous occasions. I've even created ceremony, sacred ceremony, as, being born into that Virgo tribe of the high priests and priestesses that have come back to assist humanity. I've created sacred ceremony out of some of the material that's in this book. It's a powerful book, and I encourage everybody to read it because it's a more yin way, right? A more not so aggressive, right? way, not the shadow side of the masculine way of being able to disconnect ourselves from the patriarchy. And so in this Gemini realm, in terms of the wounds of the mind, what Sedna is always doing for us, but now in the mental realm, is that she is going to be helping humanity to transmute pain into power. And of course, this again speaks to Pluto, right? Pluto is the empowerment through, rebirth through. She's going to help us to transmute suffering into peace. And so essentially, all of the transmutational work that she'll be doing in that realm, that mental realm, that lower mind, is she's going to be healing the mental anguish of humanity that exists as a direct result of the wounding by patriarchy. So this next 43 years of her journey through Gemini is going to be huge in terms of empowering humanity and being able to evolve further and further towards their leading edge. And remember, with Maria Salome there, huge empowerment in terms of humanity getting into the right mind space for understanding that they are becoming the New Jerusalem, and that the New Jerusalem is not some place on the map that you can drive to or fly to. So this is really huge work that's going to be happening in terms of helping to evolve humanity. And this is just the surface, right? There's all kinds of things that are going to start coming up as we delve deeper and deeper into this mental realm with her. Okay, so as I mentioned, her move into Gemini 3 days before this new moon on the 18th is highly significant. And I didn't mark it here, but there she is with Maria Salome in Gemini. And here's the new moon. We know it's a new moon because the sun and the moon are standing together in the sky. And that's happening at 26 degrees of Gemini, 43 minutes. This is spectacular. You know, this is almost 27 degrees. So two degrees away from an exact square to Osiris, right? Square is 90-degree angles. Square to Osiris, the cosmic Christ. This square is enabling us to plant seeds around the breakthrough in consciousness that humanity is able to finally remember and recognize that we are Christed beings, that we are human and divine. And part of the trip that patriarchy has played on humanity through it, the disempowerment, is to allow humanity to believe that they are sinners, worthless sinners that require an intercessor on their behalf to be able to speak to the gods or to speak to the source of all that is created, that we are disconnected from source, and that source as a god is fearful and judgmental and will punish us. Okay, from that mind space, from that psyop, it is a huge leap for people that have bought into that program to accept that they are not sinners, that they don't require an intercessor, that they themselves are Christed beings, you know, so much so that thought in and of itself would be considered blasphemous, right? Going against the power of the church to dare believe that you don't require the authority of the church to tell you who and what you are, that you can know for yourself the truth of who you are. So these seeds around the fact that humans are Christed beings is a huge breakthrough in consciousness that's being planted in this mental realm for this new moon. And of course, all that programming, all that psyop that would prevent humanity from receiving those seeds into their mind and to allowing those seeds to take root and start to sprout is being alchemized, transmuted by Sedna. Okay, it's a part of the plan to help humanity once they receive that mind shift, that paradox, that it creates a paradigm shift to be able to then open up to the possibility that they are becoming the new Jerusalem. And so what we see here is that Osiris, the cosmic Christ at 29 degrees, is making a trine to Pluto, right? That path of most allowance. So empowering humanity to take back its own mastery, to take back its self-eminence. You know, they called the popes your eminence, or the bishops your eminence, as if they are somehow higher in station and more worthy and more important than we are. This is not the truth. You in of yourself have your own eminence, that you can rise above that human animalistic side and step into and claim the divine self, your Christed self. And the entire Leo goddess journey is going to be preparing us, catalyzing us, so that by the time that the Pisces unity consciousness goddess comes onto the world stage in 2025, we are going to be able to know ourselves as Christed beings and get to know ourselves through that Pisces journeys as the Christed self that we are. No more needing to ask an outside authority, which is what patriarchy insists that you do. What would Jesus do? Because Jesus is the Christ. No, Yeshua is an embodiment of Christ, just as we are embodiments of Christ, because humans are Christed beings. It's encoded in our own DNA that we are Christed beings. If you are the sons and daughters of God, why would you expect to be anything else but? And so this whole new moon in Gemini that's taking place 3 days after Sedna makes this shift, this energetic shift that hasn't happened in over 11,000 years, is huge in terms of planting the seeds finally in the lower mind of humanity to recognize that we are Christed beings and that we are empowered through knowing and accepting and believing and making choices from this place of knowing that we are, in fact, divine and human, that we are Christed beings. And so this is just really, really super huge. You know, June 18th, when this new moon is happening, just, you know, days before that summer solstice on the 21st, when we're going to have this Venus gate activation on the same day at the crown chakra, right? The portal of authority, right? taking back our authority as sovereign beings, taking back our self-eminence as Christed beings. So much is unfolding this month. And of course, everything that's happening now is, again, catalyzing us, preparing us to be able to step into the space and work with that Leo divine royalty goddess that's coming onto the world stage in August and through that 19-month journey, and how she's preparing us for that Pisces unity consciousness goddess that will then next come onto the world stage, where we will get to know ourselves as the Christed beings that we are. So I hope that these shifts in energies that are incredibly impactful are as meaningful to you as they are to me. And I just want to thank you for watching this video, and thank you again for being a patron. If this material really speaks to you, really moves you, really excites you, and you have friends and family that you believe would be excited to hear this divine wisdom as well, please invite them to this Patreon page so that they can become members and have access to this information also. Make a really good conversation starter for you. So until my next video, thank you once again. Bye-bye.